mindset. There's so many ephemeral ideas, dreamy ideas in this film, and yet you have to make tangible decisions with your department heads. So let's talk first about, as you're writing and thinking about this film, are you thinking about it visually, or are you thinking about it emotionally and worrying about the visuals later?
Well, first of all, it's so exciting to be here with you guys. Thank you very much. It's a double kind of personality thing that you have to play. At the beginning, I swear that I start this movie as as it is still, but I think I underestimate what it will take to be done. But the beginning of it, I think every filmmaker and every screenwriter, in a way, always you start with this naive idea that you are doing something very personal, very intimate. The fabric of this film is made of something very elusive. It required of me something that I have never been experienced in my life. I made this film with my eyes closed, meaning that I have to go inside, introspective. So the material is very intimate and personal. If you are talking about the flesh out of these things, yes. When I finish, it's like when you are how can I say, a doctor, that you are having an open heart surgery. So you said, fuck. These guys are out, so there's no kind of perspective of what you went into. So it was a double thing. First, it was very material, spiritual, intimate, personal things that you are putting out there. And then when I realized that not only my personal kind of memories, but the collective memories of my country, some of them are huge events that has hit all of us and has defined who we are as a country, as a society. Suddenly I have to honor them, and I have to dignify them. And I didn't want to ask permission how I should do it, and I said, fuck it. And I suddenly said, I need to really embrace this in the size and the thing that I need to do. And it took another kind of stage. So it was a double part, the immaterial and the material, the real, the fiction, the dream, the reality. So I mean, this film was made of some, that dialectic conversation coexisting all the time.
Was it ever the case where you were on set and you're having to stage, say, a scene with a flooded apartment or hundreds of collapsing people, and you say, who wrote this scene? Because I don't know how to film this thing.
It's true. I mean, honestly, I have to say, I don't like the guy that went. No, it's true. I have to say that suddenly this film, it's this duality. We are living in a world that you have to be defined, right? You have to be a Republican or Democratic. You have to be capitalist or communist. You have to be Christian or have to be Jewish, or you have to be whatever. And this film, suddenly, it's the surrender to be in the middle, the acceptance of being surrendered to that coexistence of two realities that both, I think, and those two things were all the time present, thematically, and the substance and the execution, the form and substance were all the time in this tension about I wanted to keep it this way, but it demanded the other way, and both of them were real, and I was all the time struggling how to keep it in a middle, and that's why it's called battle.
There is a novel that I think you're fond of by a writer named Julio Cortázar called Rayuela, about kind of a circular story, and I'm wondering, it's a piece of literary work, and it's hard to use literary work as reference for your department heads. But where did you start in terms of reference? What were the kinds of ideas you talked about visually? Were they paintings? Were they pictures? Was it music? how do you start to have a conversation? Let's start with your production designer about the look and feel of this film. What were the kinds of things you were showing each other?
You know, first of all, we didn't saw images at the beginning. We spoke about the tone, the subjects, also the approach to that. Then we watched certain films together, which was a huge pleasure. It was an incredible experience that watching films together. Remember, we wanted to play with the color palette that we used in the costume design and in the film itself. So we started to watch the film The Red Shoes, you know, because it was a specific palette. I always thought that, and the film somehow is told through the eyes or through the filter of Silverio. And Silverio has certain characteristics, you know. First of all, there's some sort of alternate reality, no? And then the other thing which was important also is that he had certain sophistication, you know, like as a character. And he's very elegant in a certain way. So we wanted a specific palette of really vivid colors, but being always, you know, elegant. So we started to talk about colors, about tone. We saw some, you know, a lot of pictures. Vivian Mayer was in the play. Remember? So we saw also, you know, different photographs and images. But most of all, it was for me the important thing was the position of the point of view of Alejandro in that sense. He wanted to have all kinds of layers, to touch deep subjects in a certain way, but from the light, you know, and always from the, you know, from a lighter tone. So that was very interesting for me as a starting point. And then also talk about precision, because all of these, all this fluidity that you can see in the film, it was super precise choreography behind. So Alejandro had a lot of things in his head. He had already designed some of the ways he wanted the camera to move, and the complex choreography. So we end up doing a lot of talk about how the sets were, what was the size, and we did a lot of practice, you know, for visualization.
Alejandro, I'm going to ask you about one scene in particular, and we should give credit to Darius Kanji, your incredible cinematographer. And it's the scene. It's the scene in the apartment where you have a set, and you also have to light it, and you have to move a camera around there, and it has to get filled with water and sand and other things. But when you're working on the design of that set, how are you working to make sure that Darius can get what he needs, and you can get cinematically, and you can get what you need from the actors?
Well, I think that the first thing was to define the apartment, and the apartment is kind of a building that actually exists in the Condesa. This is kind of the 1930s architecture in Mexico, which is kind of an article, actually an English guy that designed this thing, that is a friend of ours that lived there. And this has an interior patio, and this interior patio, as you see, is almost like a fish tank that in a way is always impregnated by this light that is bounce all around and has this particular way that an apartment, I hate when there's some things that are always walls. So this apartment has the ability that you can have a foreground, the face of an actor, a middle ground and a background, and always there's different shades of light. The problem here, I want the constant, Darius and I talked from the beginning about the radical of this film, and I want, the most important thing was to try to get you guys in, this is not a film that tells a story. There's no story. There's a story without story. So this is, hopefully was a film experience, meaning cinema experience made of images and sound which is the definition of cinema, in where you navigate different emotions through a flow of constant images moving, as life is moving constantly, as music, as the 70s concept albums that never had a kind of a cheese song. They are stories being told in these long, long plays. And that was the theory behind, like, how we can make with the wide shot, 70 millimeters and 65 millimeters cameras, and all the time constantly moving, and the light will be shifting all the time, making you feel that something is off, the sun is moving. So for Darius Conti, and for this gentleman here, the challenge was how to build a set that can allow sand, water, light movement, to create a dream sensation that is designed to break walls, and we can put the camera in very unexpected place, in one shot, in 360-degree movement. Where the hell you hide the fucking light? And that was Darius Conti's genius painting thing, that all the palettes and all the things is a very complicated thing. This is not a close-up, two-shot, over-the-shoulder, shitty cover. He said, like, okay, let's get into an experience of being presence in the landscape mental of somebody that's a walking of consciousness, and then see if people can get connected to the mind of this guy. And that was a very challenge. And the design was that from the beginning, early, I storyboard every single frame with standings, with very early kind of just walls to measure every step, every camera movement, and every single movement and thing. The precision that the dream demands is massive, because a dream you cannot improvise, you cannot capture a dream in an inspiring. You smoke a pot and you drink this kind of thing. Let's have a dream. You need to fucking design it. And it's very difficult. So it was a huge amount of work to get that.
And I want to ask you about your design for Silvero. On behalf of all journalists, I'll say we dress pretty much like that, but occasionally we use an iron. But it feels like it is not only his wardrobe, but his uniform. Like, that is what he wears almost to go into battle. If you talk a little bit about how Silvero kind of uses that wardrobe as his, it's basically his way of working. It's not just what he puts on, it's how he enters the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, as you say, his sort of second skin. I mean, I just met you when you were almost dressed like Silvero. Almost. But you were Iron. And that was one of the things that actually with Alejandro, we every time we were just, he's a very detailed director in the entire film, and obviously with Silvero, we really need to think where he was going, you know? So where he was like sitting, if he stand up, like the things have to be used, and it's not iron, you just walk out of your house. And with Alejandro, we decided to just leave Silvero in one costume throughout the film, you know, and at the beginning we were discussing a lot if we would change him or not in different scenes. And I think for the film and what he really wanted to say, it was the best way just to leave it in one only, just one costume. And it took us a lot of time just to get into that costume, into that jacket, and into that shirt and tie. We really worked hard in terms of the color. The entire film is about color, as Eugenio was saying, and the inspiration for this film. Alejandro showed us many films and many photographers, but I also think it's sort of an homage to Mexico and the color of Mexico, right? But for him, for Silvero, we decided to abstract him out of color, out of this world that he's seeing in his memories, you know, that are color. And so that's why we decided to just go in this dark green, not in black. That would be absolutely out of color. It would be just walking to the funeral. But it took us a long time just to get into that one only the shadow or the darkness, it always gets you into it.
Could you talk a little bit about these scenes in the Chapultepec castle, and especially in relation to production design, what the soldiers are wearing and how that compares to what you have Eugenio's design?
Yeah, I mean, for that, it was we together worked in a research, a deeply research of the uniforms of that time, but we wanted to also, with Alejandro, have a humor into it. And so we really worked hard in how this costumes were gonna work, you know, at some point, like, is it gonna be bloody, is it gonna be this? And with Alejandro, he ended up with this great idea of having the wigs into it, you know, that I think it's also part of the beauty of this film, that it's sort of a comedy all the time, you know, for me, yeah, I feel comedy when I read it, I did this, and I mean, it was also working with Eugenio, we have worked together so much, and every atmosphere in the film has a certain color palette that we designed together, and the Castillo de Chapultepec, as you can see, it's all in the blue tones, from the guy that is cleaning the fountain, to the uniforms, to what the guy is wearing, the blue, it's all in the blue tones, but it was also work with Caballero.
Martin, there are so many different sound elements in this film. There is the environmental sound, there is score, there is song, and there's also silence. Silence is a very important thing here. So when you're starting to talk about sound design with Alejandro at the beginning, what was your idea about how you're gonna balance score, song, and I think really importantly, silence in the sound design?
Yeah, first I want to thank Nicolas Becker, who's not here. He's on the other side of the Atlantic, probably sleeping already. And he was a co-sound supervisor, sound designer of this film. And his colleague, who I met Nico Becker a long time ago, in 2008, when he was a Foley artist we were doing Hellboy for Guillermo Young. And he did an amazing sort of elements, sound, Foley elements for that film. And in a dinner, I met Ken Yasumoto. And Ken was and is still the sound designer and supervisor for Gaspar Noé films. So imagine the luxury of that. Darius Conji, the cinematographer, he mentioned his name. And Nico has worked in Mexico doing the sound of metal, mixing it there. And he you know, and then I returned also to France to do On the Road, the version of Walter Salles' classic novel, and he was also the Foley artist there. So I want to say that he's very much present, as you can say in the film, and he's very much present here. But I also want to acknowledge, I also want to acknowledge.
What was that?
That was a sneeze. I hope it wasn't a COVID sneeze.
And I also want to acknowledge you guys, very cheerful crowd here, because it's very important how the translation of the work becomes a different work through the eyes of the viewer. Not like the viewer is the eyes of the beholder. So whatever you emancipate the translation of this film, it's very intriguing to me and all. So, but then trying to answer your question, because I went ways was within the skull. I think it's very important to say that you cannot answer that properly and honestly until you go that trip. There are no, especially with Alejandro, there are no easy answers on anything. It's just a dive into a journey, and hopefully you get there. And because of that, that's the beauty of the challenge. Because of that, you don't know if it will be successful, if you will get there. This today in another Q&A, I kind of was saying that some of the rehearsals we did, we thought that were like failures. No, we do something and we fail, and we do something and we fail. And he was mentioning, but they were not failures. They were just like not close enough. So we put. And I wish I could remind that when you were in that tree, but it's true. I mean, you just research a path, and you say, okay, this is not the path. Let's try another one. But you know, in a film as open the universe as this one is, no, like how can you reinterpret the memory or the sound of a memory, or how do you hear that? Imagine that's a whole universe on its own. And sorry, no, and I just wanted to say something that I've been saying a lot, but it's very important to me that we never got to this point originally, but I think that the film on its own, like Alejandro mentioned a minute ago, it's like a soundtrack mostly, you know, with image. But if you can see this film with headphones and turn off the video monitor, and you just hear it and you just flow, and it won't let you go. No, it's just a single moment from the beginning to the end. So it's a lot about the sound.
Speaking of that, Alejandro, I want to ask you about this scene where Silviero walks through the streets and we hear nothing at the beginning and the sound starts to build. And I have to ask, is there really a store called Tower of Babel in Mexico City? Because that felt almost too unexpected that there was actually a store called Tower of Babel at the end of the shot.
Yeah, it did. I think that store we didn't touch it. That's how it called.
Yeah.
And how do you put that sequence together? Where do you shoot it?
This is shot in the neurological center of Mexico City. This is pure downtown, Isabela Católica and Cinco de Mayo. So those are the streets that basically I think is the most populated part of Mexico City, very close to the government, you know, where the president resides. There's this great church, what's the name?
La Profesa.
La Profesa. And I choose that corner because it's exactly, again, it's a very acupunctural kind of thing. And what I want to say in this scene, this film is about death, it's about life, it's about fiction, and it's about reality, and it's about dream, it's about all the memories of this character and the fears. And I think this is the moment that the film turns into a nightmare. That's the only moment that I wanted to get a little bit into some dark moment where you are in a lucid dream, which means that you are aware that you are dreaming, which is lightful, contradictory, but fun. But there's this moment where he goes out of the mom's house, that she's suffering this dementia, and he goes into this corner and he found these shadows that appear. The shadows are just a presence, and there's a premonition thing. Downtown Mexico, you know, has a lot of energy. It's Tenochtitlan is the center of this incredible Hispanic culture that so much things has happened there. So he started walking, and then the city started turning light. And what I would like to say, all these corners were selected years in advance to have exactly the light shifting in the thing. So you see, when you see it again, the light in every corner is exactly the same, and we cast that. It was a very precise lighting decisions that Darius and I and all of us did. We had to close thousands of stores, and Eugenio has to really change, work on them. We didn't want to have any particular time. So there's like cars, and the wardrobe from Anna is from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, because what we will see is that fear, that walking there, what has been happening in our city in the last 10 years is that 130,000 people has disappeared in democracy. So there's no war, but there's 130 people disappearing with no answers, impunity. And that's a horrible thing. And that has marked our psychological state as Mexicans, because every time that you walk in Mexico, as I adore it as much as anything, I know that I can be one of those thousands of people that has or my daughter, or my son, or whatever, all of you, and there's no answer. And I wanted not to fall into the violent, literal world that this has been expressed in documentaries or films. I wanted just to express a fear, a feeling of how we Mexicans feel about this. And I wanted to, in a cinematic way, to express interiorly how these guys fearing that walk and this woman that collapsed, and then the cynics arrive to challenge that, and misogynists say, no, this woman, whatever, and then the powers of serving, the church, the militaries, the police, we are abandoned, and we citizens, we are walking without noticing what's going on, and we are normalizing a fucking situation that is horrendous. And I wanted just to not come in political, I wanted to talk about my own sensation of how I feel about this thing that bothered me so much, and I don't have an answer, but I want to just express that by people falling in front of me or imagining how it feels, and then to find all these possible crowd of people there, and then the nights come, and I wanted to portray darkness, and then all these eclipses happen, which was very challenging technically to do. I had to call God and said, please. That was challenging.
I thought you texted.
So anyway, this walk in the darkness in day of night was a very, very particular thing of storyboard every frame to have every day very, very well picked. And it took a lot of months of work, but I hope that I can express what I feel is to be in a moment of the country where there's no answers, and actually all of these things are not headlines. How do you feel about that? You know, that's what I wanted to express about that frustration.
We're gonna take audience questions. One last question for you. Silviero's documentary is criticized by the talk show host as it's supposed to be metaphorical, but it lacks poetic inspiration. Did you write that line, or was that cut out of a review of one of your movies from a critic you didn't like?
John, let me put it this way. There's nobody more harsh with myself than myself, right? My worst enemy is myself. As we all are, right? So what I'm saying, there's a moment in your life that you can detach, that you can surrender, that you can let go, and you can laugh about yourself. And I'm in that moment in my life. I can see exactly where I can destroy myself. And for me, it was a moment for me to see the predictable way that our left hemisphere of our brain, of all those work, we can destroy ourselves very easily. We can really destroy ourselves. That's a very easy job, to destroy ourselves, to destroy anything. From that detachment, from that irony, it's easy. So I was playing with two things there. One is I was observing how predictable is those judgments that easily can paralyze your life, the way you want to express, the way you want to think, the things you want to say and how you want to say it, and you just end paralyzed by yourself, not let regardless any other opinion. And at the same time, being this person, the character of the film, a journalist, confronting the old-style journalist about that other side of the hemisphere. The right is the left side and the right side. I will suggest you to read a book that is fantastic, that is called The Master and His Emissary by Ian McChrist. It's an amazing book, it's a scientific book that you will laugh, but you will understand all your friendship, your own behavior, the nation wars, everything about how our brain works. And I was trying to say, we are in this moment that certainty is almost like somebody that feels pride, but the character that I am trying to express here, Silverio Gama, where it's what I feel now, is uncertain. So he is defending to death the right that he has to be wrong, to not be certain, to not have answers. And the other guy wants to say, the truth is very serious conversation, and it's an interior conversation. The incredible things, some people felt offended. I'm sorry about that. I never intend to do that. But the fact that it went out of the movie and suddenly it was out there, I said, fuck, it's predicted, it's right, the film was right. And I thought that I took that as a very positive sign of what I wanted to say. The certain disease, and I'm in a completely thing that said, I'm absolutely uncertain, and I will define, I will really have, I want to invite everybody to have the courage to be disliked, and to not have the reason, and to be doubt about things. And I think this scene is about that for me.
Woo! Yes. And we know they did a great film, and any department head or Alejandro, but no speeches, just questions, please. I think I have that right?
Yes, I think so, yes. Well, I think it's a very demanding thing that I would say that I enjoy the writing piece, I enjoy the editing piece, because it's a bubble, it's a womb that you have an intimate interior life going on. I think the hardest part is the collaborative thing, which is massive, which is beautiful, but it's challenging because you need to have a lot of answers that you don't have, and you have a huge financial responsibility, physical responsibility, intellectual responsibility, and everything is about to fail. There's no recipe, what involve a lot of risk, there's no answers. And obviously, the journey is full of uncertainties, and it's a very exhausting thing. So, in a way, it's exciting, but it's exhausting at the same time. So that's what I mean when it's really hard to get through the physical part of this job. And but it's as they said, pain is temporary, the film is forever. And I enjoy that. But it's true that I always say to the young filmmakers, just be sure that you have something to say and that you really want to say it. Because if not, this is not a fun job. This is not like you go to the office and do some paperwork, you know? It's a fucking really hard job. Everybody said, like the guy say, action, cut, oh, that's cool. And then, no, that's not that. It's a lot of things. So when I'm saying yes, it's a very privileged, and I don't want to be like the big, come on, I'm a privileged guy, I have find my way to get here with all these guys, we're super privileged, we all are privileged, but it's a very demanding work. So what I'm saying is there's a part of this job that sometimes you ask yourself, what the hell I'm doing here? Because obviously you will be really walking in a place that people will lapidate you, know, it is really hard. And then there's a great benefit of it. But you have to be conscious that not all of this is good. So, yes, every film, I always said, like women, when they have kids, my wife, or any woman that I know, the pregnancy, when in the labor room is super painful. And then when you ask them, how was it? Oh, it was so beautiful. But the fucking pain in the labor room is fucking hard. To give birth to a kid is really a physical job that is very painful. But we tend to forget about it. But I'm very, I understand how difficult it is to make a movie. It's really to give birth to something, and it's very painful. So we then cancel those memories and we make the next one. Oh, it's so beautiful. Am I
It's
right?
even, yes. Yes.
We really forgot, we drug ourselves. It was great. No, it's not great. It's fucking painful. Can I answer your question?
Yeah. I want a question.
On my side, you can tell that scene, many of the battle scenes are just a regular day in Mexico. You just go to a hospital and that happens. Well, Alejandro's very keen on the details there, and the layers that are happening. He was always saying, when we were watching the scene, he was always saying, look at that there, far there, that's a dog there. Where's the dog? No, the migrants coming, walking, and you see that. both. So he was a lot of you know, the layers of that. And the truth is that resonance becomes important when it occupies a space. No? Like this conversation has a resonance because the voice has a space, and then there's quietness. No? And every time that I pause, there's attention to that. So the combination of silence and movement and loudness, so, because when everything is important, then nothing is important. So you cannot be all the time on top of everything, because then it's just a cluster of things. It's like a wall. And that's a delightful scene to create, because there is the reluctance of the character to talk, no? And that is very upsetting. No, he doesn't want to be exposed, and everything goes around him. But I think this is one of the Alejandro's nightmares as well.
Eugenio or Ana, anything you want to add?
So well, yeah, everything was created around the character. As we have told, it's about there was a complex choreography in almost every shot, and what we did is, and we talked about that, and we try to do it all the time, is to create layers.
Right.
So it was layers that tell, that serve the purpose of the action, but also have a comment, and also play with this, with this thing, which is the transmission of a feeling.
Right.
So that's what we worked in with the background scenes. For me, it was surprising, and it was an immense amount of work of Ana and her team. For example, when we were shooting in downtown, Alejandro already mentioned, we mixed certain period of time, 5 decades, which are somehow the decades that form the memories of Silverio, but the color palette and the extras was super precise. Ana fit with the team of custom design plus the props, every extra on the film. So all of them being numerous, because sometimes they were, I don't know, maybe we had 500 extras or 200 extras. All of them, we knew where would they be and how would they look like prior, and Alejandro had approved every one of them in really long meetings in a certain way. So as I was talking, there was a lot of precision, and then in the Supongamos thing, yes, it was based on the real television, but we enhanced that reality. And Supongamos was a show that we always talked on how we will help the audience feel what the character was feeling. He was engulfed by the set in a certain way, like a mouth of, like it was like a huge jaws that were somehow closing in this character that doesn't want or cannot talk. So I think that was the way we set up the action. Just in let's say in different levels, different layers of how you say that, different layers of what we want to tell and what will serve the action.
Right. This could be very unfair, but we have time for one more question.
Very good question. It was a very extraordinary experience for me, I have to say. I have worked with the best actors in the world, I think. But this time with Daniel Jimenez Cacho and Grisela Siciliani and Iker and Jimena, I think that the approach was very different. The differences was that they never read the script. And the reason it was that I felt that basically we were getting into slices of moments, and the casting was very particular because I was not interested in the craft or in the precedence they had as a craft actors or actresses. I saw them interview them, and I could see in their eyes as a window something that was the emotional baggage they carry was truthful to the people that I knew they had to represent because I knew them very well. And with Daniel Jimenez Cacho, I had a dinner, for example, knowing that he was one of the best actors in Mexico. We come from the same generation, we have been married for the same time, and we have kids the same age, but his meditation practices and his interior life guide me through some images that he confessed me that he was having by some practices that were actually the same images of some of the moments of the script. So there was a very strange cosmical encounter there. I said, this guy, even if he was not being an actor, this guy understands the journey that the character is going through. And then, for example, Jimena La Madrid, which is the role of Camila in the film, she was taken to Dubai, and she has been in Dubai for 20 years in her life. Her father is a pilot. And she grew and lived in Dubai, being a Mexican. She never knew was Mexican, and then she came to New York to study acting. When she was 20 years old, she's now 25, and she started discovering her Mexicanity at this moment. So basically, the role she's playing, all what it was not, which is kind of a very personal story with my daughter, which we came here when she was 6. These memories that we all as a family have been going as a gypsy family, taking out roots and affection and all the losses and all the things that we cannot grasp, all that emotions that I know who are immigrant here, but when you are away from your country, all the nostalgic melancholy and all these things that are lacking, that you are flying, but the roots are where, all that things was from her, and in a way, for example, Silverio Gama, Daniel Jimenez Cacho, the only thing that I said to him is don't build a character, don't construct it, don't create the classic acting strokes of act 1, act 2, act 3, plot point from here he loves the woman, but then he's betrayed, then he's in revenge, all that shit. I didn't care about that. It's just be present, which sounds very, light, be present. Yeah, that's easy. Okay? When you have 70 lights, like 100 people, and do not react, just respond. It's very different to react to respond. So just respond, be aware, be present, and he owned all the things that the film was going through, the father relation, the loss of somebody, as my wife and I went through, the loss, a very big loss, the traumas, the adolescence that come, the old age, the fear to die that we all have, the mother dealing with things, the friends that are not friends anymore, the questions of your own posture of your public life, your intimate life, the question of how you got there, all that thing that we all have. You don't have to be a director to get through that. Daniel owned, and he just be present, and I could see how his eyes were moving very delicately, and he just gave the film his very fragile, vulnerable reality, and that's the way he performed. And I had never had that in my life. I have worked with actors constructing something, but not vulnerably open themselves to be exposed to them. And that's what this film is about, that we own vulnerability, and the strength of that is very powerful.
Before I thank our panel, I want to thank everybody for showing up. And I want you all, and I think I can speak on behalf of the panel, tell your friends to go see movies in theaters. Go see Bardo, go see She Said, go see One Talking, go see Babylon, go see Avatar, go see movies that matter, because if you don't go see them in theaters, they're not going to get made, regardless of what Netflix is doing. Alejandro, Eugenio